make it part of life, that parents actually act on their children's behaviour and so on. And I just think we've got the opportunity to do that more than we've ever had. So hopefully you've picked up some inspiring information from these wonderful people here today, and I really thank you for attending this afternoon, and thanks again.
Thank you very much indeed, Hayden, for an absolutely fantastic panel. Really, really fascinating. We're now going to move on to our very last panel of the summit, delivering transformative solutions for our planet. So putting all of what we said over the last 2 days into some packaged form and deliver it to you so you can take it back to your homes, to your businesses, and to your organizations. Perhaps we'll be able to do that. In any case, to help us try and do that, we have an excellent moderator, Ram Nidumolu, the founder and chief executive of InnovaStrat, who you've already met, of course, and he will be presenting and introducing his panel. Thank you.
That's a huge, excuse me, that's a huge burden to place on us now towards the end of this day. I will summarize 2 days of, but we'll try our best. And I'm also mindful of the fact that we are here, the 5 of us, between you and the weekend, and also a wedding going on. So we'll try to make this conversational. And I was thinking in terms of having a different format. I'll interview, in a sense, each of the panelists. So ask them some questions, and also invite the other panelists to participate in that interviewing. So it's sort of a collaborative, shared business model of interviewing. And, but before that, let me just set the stage. So our panelists, Ranjit, on my extreme left, Ranjit Thakur from TCS, an advisor to TCS. And then we have Carrie Freeman, Sustainability Director at Intel. We have Alison Rowe, Global Executive Director of Sustainability at Fujitsu. And we have Jim Walker, co-founder of the Climate Group. We'll spend a little bit more time digging into their background as we talk to them in turn. But let me just set the stage. In the past 2 days, we've been looking at what I would call really wicked in that sense of truly being wicked infrastructure problems. They're not the problems that businesses have dealt with in the last century. They're really of a very different nature now. They require solutions that have many stakeholders, especially the government, civil society, and so on. And there is an urgency, an increasing, escalating urgency to this. There is this notion of shared value contributing to society and to the environment. And there is also a striving for new business models, an attempt to understand the value of ecosystems, a way to fold it within your analysis. So really the nature of the problem has changed. And that's, in a sense, the crux of the problem, of the issue here. And this is a work in progress also. You know, WIP, Wicked Infrastructure Problems, also stands for work in progress. And we're, in a sense, struggling to find that answer. And just as a preview of what we're trying to do, so many of the examples that came out in this conference and other examples that we'll draw on later will be pulled together into some next practices, going beyond best practices into next practices on these kinds of problems and the transformative solutions that address them. And that will be presented in London in a report that looks at the different attempts to solve these problems. So that's the stage for this. But without further ado, let me just maybe start with Ranjit. And let me just set this. So Ranjit, you have a very interesting background. And part of your background is, you created this concept of naturenomics. And let me just ask you, how did you get into sustainability? And what are the kinds of examples you've seen that are successful in solving these kinds of problems, or attempting to solve them? And so a set of 4 questions, I would say, asked of each panelist. How did you get into sustainability? What are some examples you've seen that are relatively successful? What are the kinds of mindsets and changes in business models that you think are needed to address these problems? And finally, some sense of what's the potential impact of these in any order you want to do. Is there a microphone? I don't think so.
Hi there. It all goes back to sort of growing up. I grew up in a very pristine area near Burma, and it's in the northeast part of India. And it was a tea plantation, but it was surrounded by a lot of biodiversity, what we called jungles in those days, jungles and forests. And they were not monoculture, they were not sort of like the tea estate itself, which was actually a hybrid of monoculture. I think that inspired me to sort of later years sort of go back and actually look at my own inheritance, because somewhere down the line, you know, in this process of evaluation, my parents were always wanting me to go to a city from a village. And when I reached the city, I was wanting to go back to the village. So I think the whole issue was really, you know, what is this natural asset that we talk about? Is the flat in London or Bombay or in Tokyo, or in Japan or Russia, all the places that I've worked in, more valuable than actually this natural asset that we had? So it inspired me to write a book. And in fact, my first book is called Our Natural Inheritance. And it is based on a park, so we tweaked the book's name a little bit and actually called it the Kaziranga Inheritance. Kaziranga is a park for one-horned rhinos in northeast part of India. And that inspired me to actually move on to the next bit, because this was a nice tabletop book, and it was exciting to sort of peddle it around, because people said, oh, you're an author. I wasn't really, because what one was doing was, it was a collection of photographs, and that really added on to being my visiting card, because the next step was, what is the value of this inheritance, and how do you value it? So that led us on to this very interesting subject called naturenomics, which is a combination of what is natural asset value, or what people have been referring to over the past 15, 20 years as natural capital. How do you take natural capital and economics? You know, I don't think we are here to sort of rubbish economics, otherwise the very purpose of our being here, or the very reason we are here, is in fact economics. And the fact that economics is not all bad is also quite demonstrated by the fact that we have gone up in terms of education, the world. We have gone up in terms of water, we've gone up in terms of hygiene. So it's not here to rubbish a system and say that nature is all good and we should all go back to living a life.
Let me stop you there. So as you do this kind of analysis, what have you seen of examples that maybe in India that seem to be successful in this area?
I think, you see, what comes to my mind is possibly 3 or 4 examples, and those examples are not linked with, not necessarily nature-related, but will be very relevant. And I'll tell you why. I think, let's take the internet revolution or mobility. You know, in both cases, I was there, I was one of the 10 people to have launched the first cell phone in India in '95. And that has led to so much transformative change and empowerment of people right down to the village, that it actually is a medium for change. So I'll come to what the change could be. Secondly, I was also sort of privileged to launch one of the first internet services in the UK in '99, which was just post my days in telecom. So that was one of the first, and we brought it to India. In fact, it was in Vizag that we had our center. So it's part of your hometown growing up. And really what that internet showed me was the power of communication, the power of knowledge, and the power of actually sharing. Both these mediums, in terms of actually break, if you talk about innovation, these 2 innovations have actually impacted this generation of ours. If this is the kind of innovation that we want, do we really need another innovation to actually do this transformation of awareness of this whole value that we have with nature and its assets? So really my point is, how do we use already existing innovation to do that change? Our innovative...
So the question on that comes up is, you know, for many of these innovations and organizations, the big issue first is changing mindsets. Getting people to recognize that sustainability, for example, does contribute to the bottom line. So if you take that telecom example in India, there was a big mindset change related to, you know, people who otherwise had no awareness of technology. What do you think was going on there that might be instructive for sustainability?
In fact, the mindset was really funny. I came to Indonesia in those days, by the way, and it was really strange. I was with a very dear friend of mine who's part of the critique industry. And he said, I'll never use a phone because, I never use a mobile phone. People in Bombay said, I'll never use it because the phones work in Bombay. People in Delhi said, we'd use it because the phones don't work. The mindset at that time was one of resistance, saying that we don't need it. And in the internet too, when you actually introduced it in office, they said, no, we can't do without paper, and we cannot do a paperless office. Sure, paper has